Any disinterested bystander will be greatly moved to wish them Godspeed. But to any disinterested bystander, there will also come the question, what is the use of it all? Is it not so much a question of what is aimed at? It is not so much a question of what is aimed at as of the chances of its working out. The logic of the Zionist project plainly runs to the effect that, whereas this people have achieved great things while living under conditions of great adversity, scattered piecemeal among the Gentiles of Europe, they are due to achieve much greater things and to reach an unexampled prosperity so soon as they shall have a chance to follow their own devices, untroubled within the shelter of their own frontiers. So, Veblen continues, it is a fact that must strike any dispassionate observer that the Jewish people have contributed much more than an even share to intellectual life of modern Europe. This intellectual preeminence of the Jews has come into being within the Gentile community of peoples, not from the outside. That the men who have been its bearers have been immersed in this Gentile culture in which they have played their part of guidance and incitement. It is on this point that a question is raised here as to the nature and causes of Jewish achievement in Gentile Europe. Veblen answered that it appears to be only when the gifted Jew escapes from the cultural environment created and fed by the particular genius of his own people, only when he falls into the alien lines of Gentile inquiry and becomes a naturalized, though hyphenate citizen in the Gentile Republic of Learning, that he comes into his own as a creative leader in the world's intellectual enterprise. It is by loss of allegiance, or at the best by force of a divided allegiance to the people of his origin, that he finds himself in the vanguard of modern inquiry. Finally, that pioneering and engineering work of guidance, design, and theoretical correlation in the modern sciences and in the field of scholarship at large presupposes a degree of exemption from hard and fast preconceptions, a skeptical animus, release from the dead hand of conventional finality. The intellectually gifted Jew is in a peculiarly fortunate position in respect to this requisite immunity from the inhibitions of intellectual quietism. But he can come in for such immunity only at the cost of losing his secure place in the scheme of conventions into which he has been born, and at the cost also of finding no similarly secure place in that scheme of Gentile conventions into which he is thrown. For him, as for other men in the like case, the skepticism that goes to make him an effectual factor in the increase and diffusion of knowledge among men involves a loss of that peace of mind that is the birthright of the safe and sane quietist. He becomes a disturber of the intellectual peace, but only at the cost of becoming an intellectual wayfaring man, a wanderer in the intellectual no man's land, seeking another place to rest farther along the road, somewhere over the horizon. They are neither a complacent nor a contented lot, these aliens of the uneasy feet. But that is, after all, not the point in question. What was the basis of the Jewish attraction to cognitive relativism in America? Did Jewish progressives see it as advancing a universalist or assimilationist program, or did they, like their European cousins, experience it as a form of resistance to the dominant culture? Here we need briefly to examine the significance of positivism in the development of post-Enlightenment culture. In Europe, by the end of the 19th century, the post-revolutionary struggle between church and state and religion and science had culminated in a system of thought that underlined the separation between facts and values and between law and morals or religion. The development of legal positivism and value-free social science were offered as an objective alternative to religious superstition or feudal, local, or tribal attachments. The effort to find universal laws of society or of historical development modeled on the laws of the natural sciences expressed this generalizing, universalizing mode of consciousness. In America, by contrast, positivism only began to emerge in social thought around the turn of the 20th century. While religious establishment died a slow, non-revolutionary death during the half-century after the American Revolution, Protestant religious culture continued to exercise a powerful hold over American culture. Even secular American social thought remained highly moralistic due to the influence of the Scottish common sense philosophy as well as natural rights theory. The struggle between religion and Darwinism after 1870 also postponed the emergence of positivism, since if what survived under the survival of the fittest was also more evolved and therefore more valuable, then the is also contained its own ought. Unlike Europe, where rationalism, universalism, and positivism united against the old order, in America, moralism was not automatically associated with religious superstition or traditional social hierarchy. Only in America were progressive social thinkers, many of them Jews, able to combine a pre-modern, prophetic, and essentialist moralistic passion for social justice with a critical modernist sense of the socially constructed character of social categories and institutions. If they were cognitive relativists, they were certainly not moral relativists. Rather, by challenging the claim of social institutions to be neutral, natural, and necessary, they sought to underline, as Felix Kohn put it in 1931, quote, that all valuations of law are moral judgments, that the problem which the judge faces is, in the strictest sense, a moral problem, and that the law has no valid end or purpose other than the maintenance of the good life. They projected their Jewish moral perspectives onto American pragmatism, which drew away from static universalism to emphasize contextualism and consequentialism. They frequently invoked Holmes's aphorism that general propositions do not decide concrete cases. They were drawn to Dewey's dynamic and experimental conception of the formation of morals through the dialectic interaction between theory and practice and the general and the particular. And the famous Brandeis brief in Muller versus Oregon expresses not commitment to value-free social science, but the reformist urge to bring theory and practice, fact and value, into confrontation. As Philippa Strum put it, Holmes was the detached, cynical observer, Brandeis the deeply involved reformer. If Holmes argued for the separation between law and morals, Cardozo, like Brandeis, would insist that, quote, it really matters that the judge is under a duty to maintain a relation between law and morals, between the precepts of jurisprudence and those of reason and good conscience. The constant insistence that morality and justice are not law has tended to breed distrust and contempt of law as something to which morality and justice are not merely alien but hostile. Not for us, the barren logogamy that dwells into the contrast between law and justice and forgets their deeper harmonies. Yet Cardozo could also proclaim the modernist slogan that law is not found but made, because, quote, everywhere there is growing emphasis on the analogy between the function of the judge and the function of the legislator. The force which in our day and generation is becoming the greatest influence of them all is the power of social justice, Cardozo concluded. If the push to value-free social science within progressivism emerged out of an urban, secularizing, and professionalizing effort to distinguish itself from a rural and religiously based populism, Jewish progressives, by contrast, seemed unwilling to abandon their moralistic encounters with law and social life. None of the Jews I've mentioned, except for perhaps for Sheldon Gluck, lost their critical moralism to positivism. Jewish moralism, we need to see, was not assimilationist when set in the background of the emergence of positivism in American social thought. It was highly distinctive, passionate, emotional, and ultimately critical of the existing order. In legal realism, moralism combined with the subversive threat of cognitive relativism. What is Jewish about these Jewish progressives? The answer to this question is deeply bound up with controversies over the meaning of Jewish history, and in particular with one's understanding of the meaning of Zionism. Does there remain a secular conception of diaspora Jewishness, one that defines the Jew independently both of traditional religious Jewish culture and of the Zionist promise of overcoming the alienated state of Galut through the wholeness of life in a Jewish state? With the erosion of the Zionist transformative project, what do we now believe about the alienated diaspora Jew who once was to be eliminated through the negation of Galut? After Hitler, does the alienated cosmopolitan Jewish intellectual any longer offer a creative Jewish alternative to assimilation in diaspora culture?